Okay, so being 5:05, I think we'll get a head start on our webinar today. Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for dialing into the webinar today, Building Consumers' Connections Through Contextual Advertising. My name is Mercedes Riofrio, and I am a Global Market Research Manager here at Seedtag. Before we go into our main session today, I would like to take a brief moment to explain a little bit about what we do here at Seedtag. Seedtag is an advertising technology company that offers entirely cookieless solutions for brands' advertising purposes. And we do this through contextual targeting strategies that are enabled by our top-notch artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies that allow us to understand real-time what the consumer is reading and matching that to a relevant ad impact. Our aim here at Seedtag is to deliver the most relevant and engaging communications in a privacy-first world. And today we'll be touching on exactly that. We'll be touching on how contextual can empower brands to make those connections that brands look for so much now with consumers in a world where the user online is increasingly concerned about how their privacy is being tracked and also extremely picky about the quality of ads that they are impacted with. Today, I am joined by Maira Barcellos from Nielsen, also joined by Pablo from Nielsen as well, and joined by our very own Patricia Alfaro, a Global Growth Manager here at Seedtag. And before we deep dive into the findings of this quite interesting piece of research, I would like to do a round of introductions, and I thought it would be great if we can start with you, Maira. Can you please share a little bit of your industry expertise and why becoming Seedtag's partner in this quite interesting piece of research was so interesting for you on Nielsen's side?
Yeah, sure. And hello, everyone from across the globe. And it's a pleasure for me to be here. Initially, I would like to thank the Seedtag team for the invitation and to make Nielsen part of the study. We have really enjoyed collaborating with them, and we are really proud to meet like fabulous professionals and learn from their business. My name, as mentioned before, is Maira Barcellos. I'm from Brazil, but I'm handle the business here for the Nielsen measurement for Spain, Portugal. And I have more than 20 years of experience in digital marketing and ecosystem. And since 2017, I have the key role of consolidating the measurement business for Spain, Portugal. And my role in this presentation will be to put the initial context of the sector and take again the collaboration with Seedtag for the trust placed in our work. Having said that, I would like to take the chance to talk about the industry nowadays with all the changes in the advertisement ecosystem that we are having like almost daily, right? The need for innovative, intelligent, impactful targeting is paramount. How consumer data is collected and used it's really under close scrutiny, and we continue to be in the future. As we are listening, lots of things around this scrutiny. For this reason, offering the industry a new opportunity to learn and explore how they effectively interact with consumers through a new lens is really fascinating to us. As we see this a challenge faced by many of our clients nowadays. It's true that there is a specific need to evaluate how the experience in which consumers are immersed within content can create new opportunities, especially for brand engagement, positively influence perceptions and offer a unique new way of targeting the market. Seedtag experts and leaders in this area of contextualized advertising have partnered with us, Nielsen, to test their hypothesis. Our purpose, once received the need, was to assess whether the context in which consumers are immersed within content can positively influence their receptivity to the category and perception of certain brand metrics. So this webinar will be incredible, interesting, and I hope you enjoy it.
Very well, thank you for that very nice introduction, Maira. In fact, it was a very exciting partnership because having your audience expertise at our right hand to understand the effectiveness of the strategies we are implementing here at Seedtag was really crucial to understand how we can succeed in the advertising world and how we can battle the challenges that the industry is facing. Now I would like to move to Pablo because he's the expert on the research methodology development, and I would like to understand a little bit more of his side on the experience, on the participation in this research project and the collaboration with Seedtag.
Thanks, Mercedes. Really happy to be here. So as Mercedes mentioned, I'm Pablo Roa, research manager at Nielsen. A little bit from me, I spent the last 6 years of my career interpreting data to help brands build creative and innovative strategies that ultimately will help them promote their business. To me, this project was really interesting because we're going to challenge something that's been traditionally done or thought in the world of advertising. Also, it was very interesting for me to develop a methodology that help us provide insights on how this new disruptive, innovative, new advertising approaches can add value to brand advertising efforts.
That's quite interesting. And now I cannot wait to hear more about how the methodology was developed in detail and what you aim to prove through this research. But now I want to turn to our very own Patri, because she has been at Seedtag for over 5 years now. So she has been experiencing firsthand how the advertising industry has been quickly evolving, and she has been seeing how Seedtag has been quickly adapting to these changes that are basically coming on a day-to-day basis. So I want to turn over to her to hear a little bit more about her experience and why she was so keen on conducting this research.
So hi, everyone, and thanks, Mercedes, for the brief intro. I'm super excited to be here today. I'm also super grateful. So thanks again to the Nielsen team to join us today. I think the key objective of this webinar is to walk our audience through some of the key takeaways from this joint research piece. But I think before we actually get started and start discussing them, it's important to take a moment and give our audience a bit of context so that they can understand some of the reasons behind this project. So as Maira has already mentioned before, I think we are within a new scenario. The digital ecosystem is experiencing a lot of changes, a lot of challenges. And as you just mentioned, Mercedes, as well, I think I've been lucky enough to join this company over 5 years now, so that I've been able to see firsthand how Seedtag has been able to adapt by developing its own contextual technology. So we've been shifting from being a really small company just focused on in-image advertising, which was a really niche solution for our brands, to now offer a wide variety of solutions through our full contextual stack. So I think that's the first thing to get started. And obviously, seeing the high potential of this technology, what we wanted to do through this research is just to partner with someone who's reliable enough and who will be able to help us test our technology and our targeting approach versus some of the main marketing and targeting approaches that we see in the market nowadays. So of course, that's the main goal of the project. But just a final thing from my end, I think it's important to bear in mind that through this paper or this research, unlike most research pieces that we see in the market, our aim is not to position contextual as the one and only solution, but more to help our brands, our clients understand when to use it, how, for what type of products, at what stage of the consumer journey, so that they can actually leverage its full potential and actually build these consumer connections.
Thank you for that, Patricia. I think all the insight you have just provided really fits in quite nicely to where are we moving right now. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I want to do an overview of the topics we'll be covering in our session today. So I will first hand over to Nielsen on Pablo to briefly cover how they developed the methodology approach to this research and what they aim to discover. And then Patria and Pablo will take the floor and discuss the overview of the results in this research. We'll discuss how we can embrace the halo effect through advertising. We'll also discuss how reaching the right audience at the right time is so important to generate those positive emotions in users, and also not to disrupt their content consumption experience while they are browsing the internet. We'll also briefly touch on the ultimate goals of advertising, which is driving some sort of action and performance for the investment that brands are placing in this digital world. And we'll close with some really interesting insights on how contextual perform particularly well at engaging niche audiences. Then we'll conduct a really brief Q&A for anyone that has a question that comes up during our session today. You can feel free to put it in the chat box and we'll address it by the end of the session. You can expect the speakers today to have the floor for around 20 to 25 minutes, and then we'll conduct the Q&A. So feel free to any of your doubts to leave it in the chat box. So without further ado, to kick things off, I want to turn over to Pablo, and I think a good place to start before we deep dive into the findings of this research is to really explain to our audience here today how this research was developed and how you approach this sample development and what you aim to achieve.
Yes, of course. So first, the main objective of the project was to measure and compare the reaction of the audience with different ways of targeting advertising. We want to understand how they felt and how they reacted. So by doing that, we compare different ways of advertising, different targeting advertising to our audience, and you can see them in the screen now. So the first group will be people that had no targeting at all. Then were people that were targeted only by demographics, for example, by age and gender. I'm saying if it's beauty, it will be females, young females. Maybe if it's cars, would be males, just like a couple of examples. Interest, they were targeted in base of interest. If they're interested in cars, they would see advertising about cars and so on. And contextual, that is where is actually the hero here that we want to test and compare against other groups, is they would, we actually developed methodology that using our online survey, leveraging a control media environment. When we using the same survey across the 4 different targeting audiences, we asked them to select our article from a list, and only by that we were able to divide it in these 4 groups. So, for example, people in the contextual group will be people that selected interest, a niche interest, and the ad will be around that. So, for example, it could be so sustainability, for example, it will be a niche article, and ad will be around that, for example.
Very clear, Pablo.
Yeah.
I think it seems like you wanted to include all the targeting strategies that right now exist within the advertising industry, right? To compare them.
Yes, we try that. I think we focus in the main ones. So let's see the findings.
Great. So now I'm very intrigued and I will turn over to Patri to see really what performed best at building those connections with users and the overarching findings of this experiment when you compare them to the other targeting strategies.
Sure. I think I was thinking before this webinar in a clear way to position these results so that our audience today can easily understand them. So I think the best way is to look at them as if we were looking at a typical consumer's journey sales funnel. So obviously, if we look at this funnel at the upper part, what we see is that what is most important for brands is to, first of all, grab users' interest and attention and retain it for long enough. And in this stage, what we also wanted to test is how the halo effect can also be translated into the digital ecosystem. And I think this is a really interesting point that we'll be touching a bit more later today. Second stage, obviously, we are moving down the funnel. it'll be looking at the perceptions and feelings that the ads can actually drive into their consumers. So in this sense, I think it's important to differentiate two things: the positive feelings. And in this case, when we were comparing contextual with other sorts of targeting, what we saw is that results were like quite in line comparing contextual versus the other approaches. Well, and here comes, I think, the key finding of this part of the research is when we look at the negative feelings of how irritated the consumers felt when being impacted by different type of ads, the one that scored the lowest was contextual advertising, proving how this type of targeting or this type of approach help brands to be perceived as less intrusive by consumers. And I think that's super important. And of course, we cannot forget about action. If we look at the lower funnel here, what matters is all about engagement, interaction, and obviously purchases. So in this sense, what we found out, it was that especially for niche product categories, contextual was outperforming some of the other forms of targeting that we were testing. So that would be a global overview of these results.
Yes, so here I would like to highlight upon that Patricia mentioned, which is quite relevant nowadays. So when we think about advertising, the major objective of advertising is to attract attention, to rouse interest, and finally to influence some sort of action. If an advertising fails to call the user attention, it could be considered a waste of effort and budget. So results in the study show that people whose attention is grabbed by an article related to the advertising, contextual, will be considerably more interested in the advertised category than when compared to other targeted methodologies. And as a result, the probability of the ad being liked by the audience increases. And as a brand, that's something that you need because it makes it more likely for the respondent to interact with advertising, possibly generating more awareness and ultimately leading to the action, which could be the purchase.
How interesting. So Pablo, you touched on attracting attention, and I think Patricia briefly touched on the halo effect, which I find quite fascinating. And I bet the audience here today is as curious as I am to learn more about how we can leverage on this theory through advertising and how it translates to our industry. Do you have any relevant findings, Patri, that go along with how we can use the halo effect and leverage through our contextual targeting strategies?
Yes, I think this was one of the points that was standing out from the results that we saw when analyzing everything. And I think it's important to understand how we want to translate this effect into digital advertising. So what we are assuming here is that when we reach users in a contextual way, these users are already in a positive mindset. And we are assuming this just because they are consuming content that is of their interest, content of their choice, that is meaningful, that is relevant for them. And what we are doing with contextual is not only integrating the ads perfectly so that they can match this content, but also providing some ad messages that are aligned with this content. So we are somehow trying to enhance the experience that they're having while consuming that content. So we wanted to test these hypotheses, and what we saw in the results when we look at the numbers was that when comparing contextual with other sorts of targeting, it came out that users, when reached out contextually, felt up to a 40% more excited about the product category than when they were reached in another ways. So I think this is also proving that the more we find users with this positive mindset, the more receptive they're going to be to our brand messages. So the more effective are going to be these ads in the end.
Definitely, Patri. I think you touched on generating positive emotions, and this connects quite well with other questions I've arrived to while listening to you introduce the overarching findings of this experiment. I think we can discuss users' receptiveness to ads, but it's also very interesting to look at it from another perspective and analyze how important it is not to disrupt their content consumption online, and not only generate those positive feelings, but also generate experiences that are less irritable for our users online. And for this, I want to turn over to Pablo to understand Nielsen's point of view, if there's any relevant points or any figures that are worth pointing out on how contextual can avoid disruption while still engaging consumers.
What we saw is that respondents exposed to the contextual environment felt more informed and excited about the category, which is great. But also another finding is that they were also less irritated by the advertising. In fact, we saw that demo and interest groups respondents were 60% more irritated about the ad than people targeted contextually. And ultimately is what you want. You want people exposed to your ad to feel more excited, but of course less irritated by the category. Because something that happens consistently nowadays is we tend to get the same or similar ads that are relevant to us frequently online. And this could not only be a waste of budget for the brand, but it can also have bad results for the brand displayed on it.
Totally, I totally agree. So Patri and Pablo, so far we have been discussing about ad perceptions, the feelings towards brands that are advertising, but we cannot forget that the ultimate goal of advertising is actually to drive some sort of action as a result of impacting our users online. So I would like to hand it over to Patri now, so if you can share a little bit of how this research showed that contextual ads really enhance that the incentive to take some sort of action after being impacted with a message or a brand that is more relevant to them.
Yes, of course. I think so far we've been covering pretty much the early stage of this consumer journey. So we've been focusing on the upper funnel, medium funnel. Of course, if we look more at the metrics or which are the relevant metrics for the brands within the lower funnel, here what matters is interaction, engagement, and obviously purchases. I would like to just highlight a couple of results just from the multiple comparisons and combinations that we analyzed throughout the research. And it's especially important for us to compare contextual targeting versus demographic targeting, because I think this is one of the most used across the industry, across the market nowadays, and is still in use, even though, or despite this new regulation, or despite the end of the cookie approaching. So we wanted to compare ourselves versus this type of targeting. And I would like to pick just a couple of figures. So the first one is that when we compare contextual versus demo targeting, it happens that users are up to a 35% more likely to be interested in discovering products from that same product category or that same brand. That would be the first one. And the second one that is even better is that when comparing, once again, contextual versus demo, users are up to a 60% more likely to actually click on the ad and go to the brand website. So then obviously they will be performing any sort of action. But I think that's already a really positive message and positive results when comparing these two ways of targeting.
Patri, so now you mentioned a particularly interesting insight on this research that I want to emphasize on. So you say that contextually engaged users are 35% more willing to discover new products when they are contextually engaged. This means that contextual essentially works better for new products and hence for audiences that are not fully educated on what the product is about, because you're already targeting them on audiences that know what the product is about. And I know that traditional targeting strategies worked on predefined audiences that are not always 100% accurate because of how fragmented our audience understanding is at the moment. So I think this might be a particular opportunity for Contextual on how it can help engage niche or new audiences that might be overlooked otherwise by other targeting strategies. I don't know if you have any points to highlight on this.
Totally. I think this was one of the findings that was or is at least one of the most interesting for me personally, because when we were designing the project entirely, we were touching on the different stages of the funnel, looking to cover all the different metrics so that we can make all the comparison. But this is one of the type of insights that just come out when you start like digging deeper. So I think it's a really nice one, a really interesting one, because what we were trying to understand if these stereotypes or predefined audiences that brands has been historically used for many years now are actually or are still valid nowadays. I think that would be the question. Is it still possible to target successfully and reach the right consumer through these type of audiences? That was what we were wanting to prove. And I think it's especially our results were especially relevant when we look at two of the three industries that we were analyzing in the research. So first of all, if we look at the beauty and cosmetic industry, if we think about these brands, they've historically tend to favor young female targets for their strategies. And what we analyzed and what we saw in the numbers is that men that were engaged in a contextual way were just as likely as women to perform a purchase, especially not only for the category beauty in general, but this was especially true when it came to cruelty-free organic beauty products, so the more niche ones within this category. That would be the first sample. And then if we move and analyze the results for the food one, I think the results are even better if we want to prove these stereotypes are not right or no longer right. Because what we saw here is that men, when engaged contextually, were even a higher purchase intent for low calorie, low carbs, low sugar products. So I think these are just two examples of all the results that we were analyzing in the research. But I think this is proof enough that the brands need to adapt their targeting strategies so that they can stay relevant nowadays, considering the wide variety of interests that the society is showing these days. So I think this was a really nice finding that, yes, we just come across when analyzing the data.
Definitely, Patri. I think what I mentioned earlier about the other targeting strategies overlooking opportunities is completely backed up by the examples you have just shared on how the traditional targeting strategies might be not optimizing on several engaged audiences that they can optimize on. So quite fascinating examples. I think this means that Contextual also offers brands the capability of targeting outside those traditional means and really enhance the value of the return of their ad spend, which is what brands mostly look for. So quite fascinating. I see Contextual as quite a breakthrough strategy that challenges what has been done in advertising this far. And I don't know if Pablo has anything to add regarding this point and wants to jump in.
I just want to highlight that using contextual advertising seems to be reducing the gender age bias, because like Patricia mentioned, traditionally, if we heard about beauty products, we'll try to target young females, for example. But right now the results show that, for example, in advertising environment, sustainable beauty products have the same purchase intent in males and females. And when you look at organic and natural beauty products, that niche category, you can see that men has a higher percentage of purchase intention than females. So if you look at traditional ways and we focus in females only, and we only serve impressions to them, we're not only losing impressions, we're also losing these male clients that will purchase from us.
Quite fascinating. So it seems like we're losing stereotypes through contextual advertising, which is quite an opportunity. I just want to close up right now, thanking Pablo and Maira from on behalf of Seedtag for Nielsen's participation in this project. Our partnership has been amazing. We have enjoyed so much working alongside you. And I want to also thank Patri for joining us today and sharing such valuable insights on the research we have conducted. I think the discussion here today really leaves us with the conclusion that contextual targeting does offer brands the opportunity to innovate and reinvigorate their marketing strategies in a super privacy first way in a world where consumer is increasingly worried about how their data is being used online and super worried also increasingly more picky about the quality of ads they are being impacted with. So it really offers brands the amazing opportunity to build those connections in a world that faces so many challenges. And before we move on into our Q&A session, I want to remind everyone that our full white paper is available for download at our website at seedtag.com. You can find the full scope of the insights and the research there. And I want to thank everyone for attending today, and we'll go ahead and take some time for questions. Let me check on the chat box. Here we have a good one. I don't know, maybe you can take this one, Patri. It says, can you explain a bit more about the contextual intelligence that Seedtag offers? How if contextual has been in the market for years, what's the USP that you can offer at Seedtag?
Yes, of course. I'll take this one. So I think just to we can start talking about the technology capabilities, and this will take us a while. So just to put it simple, I think what makes us or makes our technology unique is that, of course, we've been contextual from our very beginning. So contextual is in our DNA, and all this experience, all this plus 8 years experience analyzing data has allows us to make, which for me is like a really critical shift. So we are shifting from having a really good understanding at an article level. So from understanding perfectly was being written and said within just one piece of content, to truly understand what's going on, what's being written about within the entire network. So I think this holistic view of the entire content and network of content, this analysis is what allows us to first of all understand what's being trendy, what are the best moments of communication to impact consumers, what are like the best topics, trending keywords. And with all this data, what we do is just help our brands to develop more effective contextual strategies. So I think that would be the main difference, just to summarize, shifting from the article level analysis to the network level analysis. That would be it. That's, I think, something that is unique to our technology and that can empower brands to build these connections.
Very clear, very clear. Thank you for that. The next question I think can be taken by Maira from Nielsen, because could be quite interesting to get their overarching industry insight. It says, based on the current projects that you're working across different clients, what are the key concerns they are thinking about?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mercedes. So what we are hearing right now, and it's very interesting because we analyzed during our annual marketing report, I'm from brands and agencies. I really can cover the ROI analysis, but I have some problems with covering and analyzing the brand awareness. So how can I really understand the top of the funnel to understand the impacts in the rest of the funnel? And of course, that contextual targeting is the base of the brand awareness, because we are talking about the top of the funnel. So those are the main concerns right now. It's like how to measure well the complete consumer journey.
Great, thanks for that. There's another question here that is quite related to the first one that Patricia answered, but I think it's important too. It says, how do you manage to work without cookies at Seedtag? I think I can take that one. I think in the simplest of terms, contextual advertising works by matching the content of a website with the content of an ad, and does so in real time by meeting the consumer where the consumer is reading what he or she wants to read. So for example, if the consumer is reading about vegan products, it can be impacted with a vegan cosmetic ads at that moment. But contextual works in a way that is completely respectful, because it doesn't understand who exactly is behind that screen. It's only analyzing the context of what the user is exploring at the moment. And at Seedtag, we leverage on our own built-in house list technology that has been fed for over 8 years, with the purpose of having the most in-depth understanding of the network by analyzing not only keywords, but also images, media channels, page types, sentiment. And this way we can target ads in a way that is completely brand safe and suitable for our clients. So instead of using personal identifier data, we are using an automated system that displays relevant ads that are based on the content of a page. And that's why I think contextual is going to become, it's going to thrive in this world where we are completely dismissing the third-party cookie. I don't know if Patri or Pablo, you have anything to add regarding this question.
Yes, I think yes, to close. I would like to add here that what is important is that to understand that when we talk about like how we are able to target without cookies, what we basically mean is that we are not storing or using any sort of personal data, not at all. And I think that's the key point. And what we are doing is just matching this interest in real time, as Mercedes already explained. So I think that's yeah, that's just showing brands that there's still like a way ahead, even with the end of the cookies, and that they will be still able to connect with these consumers, even though they need to find like workarounds so that they can also respect their privacy while doing so.
Thank you for that, Patri. Well, I think that's all for now. We don't have any more questions, but a still friendly reminder, if you want to get the full scope of our quite interesting piece of research, feel free to go to our website at seedtag.com, download it, and get the full scope of how this research was conducted and the full scope of the very interesting insights we acquired of comparing our solution to other cookie-based targeting solutions, and what we can bring to brands and the value we can bring in making those successful customer connections in a privacy-first world. Thank you so much for attending today, and that's it. Thank you.